Hello everybody, hope you're all doing well. My name is Steven and this is the Storytime channel. Did you know that 60% of you guys watching this video right now aren't subscribed? If you enjoy what you see, please consider subscribing so you'll never miss out on our videos in the future. That being said, we've got some pro-revenge stories, so let's jump right into our first story of the day by a honey badger 3. Driving instructor got stung in the eye by a bee. Back when I was 17/18, I block booked 15 lessons with a driving instructor that was local to my workplace, around 15 miles from home. The idea was that I'd finish work and then he'd meet me at the hospital where I was employed, and we'd drive around for an hour each time before ending it at the local metro station whereby I could ride it the 45 minutes home. The first couple of lessons flew flags right up. I was competent enough to go straight onto road driving, as I was also getting a lot of driving time in my dad's car before even booking lessons. First couple of lessons he has me driving out of the way down some residential streets. I'm talking cul-de-sacs. No reason to go there unless your instructor has the destination in memory. Turns out, we were scouting out his recent ex-girlfriend's house to see if any other cars were in her driveway. A few lessons in and he has me swing by a petrol garage. Not to fill up, it was just so he could pop in to buy some chewing gum because his next pupil was some fit 18-year-old daughter of a local radio host. I continued to play it dumb because I was getting driving hours in and we'd still end up at the metro station to see me home. He was a bit of a tick of an instructor though. I'd say he was around mid-20s and all of his banter was about these fit young women he'd drive around. I was either driving too fast, too slow, too far to the left, or too far to the right. Really condescending though, and just wasn't fit to teach people. So around the 12th or so lesson, he's due to pick me up from work. It's the middle of winter and Baltic outside. Stood for an hour outside the A&E department, which was our designated pickup point, and there's no sign of him. I phoned him around 15 times by this point. Figure freak it, I'll get the bus to the metro, then the metro home. Phoned him again after getting off the metro, and this time he answers. Background noise is quite clearly pub noise with his mates shouting crap down the phone about leaving a pupil hanging. He goes on to say that he couldn't make the lesson because a bee had stung him in the eye. I still had 3 lessons pre-booked with him, so I was stuck with his butt for a little while longer. The next day, I sent him a message saying I was booking his car to sit my driving test and would require him on the date that my last lesson was booked for. He went through the whole spiel of me not being ready and all of that, but eventually relented after I agreed to sit my Pass Plus with him afterwards, were I to pass, and if not, I'd book another 10 lessons with him. We decide to double down on the hours come testing day and agreed that he'd pick me up an hour and a half before my test so I could get some time in driving to the test center. Then the other hour would be the test itself. He showed up an hour late. He was all pissed and told me we didn't have time for me to drive that day to the test center, so instead he would drive us there. Keep in mind, this had been around 2.5 weeks since our last lessons due to doubling up. So we get to the test center just in time, something like 5 minutes to spare. My test instructor comes over and my driving instructor stated he wanted to sit in the car during the test. Test instructor basically told him to do one and to sit and wait until we got back. Test went, got cut off before even leaving the industrial estate the test center was based in. Swore a bunch out loud at this driver and afterwards figured, well, I freaked this one, let's just get it over with. We were the last back to the center out of 15 drivers that went out at the same time. Got caught up in the roadworks and a ton of traffic. Test instructor left the car before coming back and saying, only 2 people out of the 15 today passed. You were one of them. Thought, brilliant. Driving instructor immediately reminded me of my Pass Plus deal. Pass Plus is around 150 pounds, I think he quoted me, and his idea was to drive from Newcastle to Manchester and back. That's a fair bit of motorway driving which is required. So I told him sure, I'm well up for it and to pick me up from the metro station near where I live, which is way out of his way considering he lived near where I worked. So the day comes to my Pass Plus test and my phone is blowing up by the minute. I let him sit there for an hour and a half, leading him on that I was on my way before dropping the ball that a bee had actually stung me in my eye on my short walk over there. Let me ask you guys, do you think this driving instructor purposefully showed up an hour late hoping that they would get extra lessons booked with them? Like actively trying to sabotage OP, or do you think they were just lazy and procrastinating? Let me know in the comments down below. And our final story of the day is by Forest Cabin 123K. Helped destroy my trust in humanity? I put you on the news. Once upon a time, I, almost 49-year-old female, had an extremely close friend, Mindy. Heck, she was not just my friend, she was like a sister. We met in grade school. She pursued my friendship, always tried to sit next to me, always wanting to talk. Over the years, we would spend lots of time at each other's houses, but by the time we were 19, my house was our meeting place because she had extremely bad family trouble. My parents kind of informally took her in because they sympathized with her situation. I always tried to make her feel like she belonged and avoided luxurious stuff if she could not afford it. Expensive shows, nice clothes she might have liked but could not wear. Other times, I just gave her some stuff from my closet. She was nice, outspoken, and made me feel like I had the most loyal friend on the planet. The years go by. I'm fresh out of college and got a nice job. Mindy's life has improved. She had her own place and a 9-to-5 very reliable job. By then, we had a group of friends, all young professionals trying to make our way. I remember that time in my life as bittersweet. We would often reminisce of our college days, and because this happened in the 90s, there were no social networks, no texting. If you wanted to get in touch, you had to exchange phone numbers or emails. Now it's fairly easier. So exchanging old stories glued us together as we wondered how things worked out for friends we may never see again. Gatherings and get-togethers happened in my apartment. I loved that place. It was spacious, still half empty because I was careful not to throw too much money into decoration. Around those days, Mindy began to look sickly and quite not herself. I was worried and loved her to death. She had been there for me, especially when my fiance broke up with me for no reason. I guess now we call it ghosting. He was the first man I ever truly loved. I was never able to get him to express his love like I did, but I accepted him for who he was. He had some cold stages which left me wanting, but I thought I could manage. Basically, I was settling for being breadcrumbed. He was gorgeous, successful, and protective. So when he proposed, I was on cloud 9 and decided to ignore the negatives. I had saved a lot of money for our wedding. To be fair, he did the same in a separate banking account. Things came to an end when all of a sudden, he broke up with me. He told me he did not want to get married and did not love me nor wanted any type of relationship. He let me keep the money from our joint account plus some of the things at the apartment. Workout bench, clothing, pretty much everything. This had a bad effect on me. I felt like he despised me and wanted to cut ties no matter the cost. Invitations had not been issued, so calling off the engagement was not such an ordeal. Mindy was there for me, listening to my pain, my rants, and endless sobbing. I lost so much weight I was embarrassed to be seen out on the street. She had a boyfriend, George, and he was awesome about letting me crash at their place whenever anguish and pain hit me hard. They both cut ties with my ex. I had made so many life-altering decisions for him only to be left in the dark. Mindy and George sat me down and disclosed that my ex was seeing someone else. I remember the shock and the emotional pain. My heart was racing and I ran to the bathroom because the bad news made me throw up. I never understood how my ex treated me like that. Those Christmases were so bad, I would sit in my living room staring at the wall. Mindy and George helped me set up a very 90s posh concept Xmas tree to cheer me up. Only white lights, a few golden ornaments, and natural pine. I was so depressed, the tree stayed put until next spring. By summer, Mindy broke some devastating news. She was terminally ill. I was so angry. She didn't deserve this. Her diagnosis was grim. So bad that George proposed earlier than he had planned because he wanted to live in the moment. She had always dreamed of a huge wedding. It was her obsession. We would go into bridal shops and try as many dresses as possible when we were teenagers. The wedding of her dreams was now out of the question. Her family would not pitch in. She'd left their home on very bad terms, and George could not pay it on his own. George was now barely out of medical school and up to his neck in debt. I decided to pay for her wedding. It would be a small event, but I would make sure the decorations and her dress were as dreamy as she had always wanted. I still had the money I had saved for my wedding, and as financially risky or stupid as it may have sounded back then, I was sure those final days with Mindy would be worth gold when she was gone. Her illness made me realize that there are worse things in this life other than being unceremoniously dumped by my ex. I threw myself into it. I was also happy and hopeful as Mindy was able to go to her chemo sessions by herself without becoming too sick. She also looked much better than other patients. Our group of friends also helped her a lot. There was not a day when someone would not bring her groceries or help pay for a random utility bill, as she was now out of work. I had initially offered to help her set up a better health insurance plan, but she declined. Pay attention to this, more on this later. So I decided not to intrude and give her the fairy tale wedding, or as close to it as I could, that she wanted. She had picked a nice rental dress and tiara. The florist was to accommodate her tastes and create an indoor garden. The venue would be my apartment. The baker had been retained for a 6-tier wedding cake. There would be 35 people, with tables, an aisle, and a musician to play some music. We could not do the loud disc jockey thing. Now, back to the insurance issue. My first job was as a junior sales executive for a health insurance company. There was a legal dispute against another insurer, and I was called in by the court to be a witness. As I was getting cleared to enter the building, I saw my ex. My stomach churned. I immediately thought, courtroom wedding. By the time I raced for the elevator, he had already vanished. That messed up my day. I relived the lack of closure all over again. I could not let it go. I contacted a good friend who I knew was doing her law internship at the court district. She helped me by checking any legal records regarding my ex. No court wedding. I was relieved, I know it sounds silly, but there was a fraud claim and he was the plaintiff. I didn't make much of it, but it was strange. He was very smart, and getting screwed out of his money sounded too uncharacteristic. I still wanted to help Mindy and tried to set her up with a good insurance plan. I knew it was difficult given that companies treat terminal patients as money-dumping risks. I pleaded with my old boss and he searched her name, but she was not in the company database. Maybe she was using a different insurer, but that was odd because she clearly told me what her insurance company was. I felt guilty because I was kind of snooping. Things were normal for a month until my friend at the courthouse broke some disgusting news. The defendant in my ex's lawsuit was my best friend, Mindy. She asked me if I knew anything about it. I had no idea or clue. She then disclosed that the case had become popular gossip among courtroom clerks because my ex had fallen for a complicated Cupid scam. As it turned out, Mindy and my ex had an illicit love affair behind George's back and mine. It spanned a full year. And she was not out of work. She had been fired for embezzlement and larceny, stealing from an employer. I did know that she kept moving apartments, but I thought she had been trying to save on rent, so she had kept looking for cheaper and cheaper places. She moved around towns in the same city. First, she took my ex's money for some investment, and she used her former employer's credibility for it. Never got too many details. Then she got him to help her with medical bills and scammed him out of close to $20,000. Her illness was fake. I avoided her for a week. I hired a PI to help me get whatever I could without much hope as their affair had ended. The private investigator managed to help me get some closure. His name was on her lease for a small studio. Everyone in the building thought they were a couple. It was their love nest and it was 2 hours away. I never suspected anything. But apparently he had been lying to me about his actual working hours. He had also helped cover for her car payment at least 6 times in a year. She had my ex as her sugar daddy. She had seen me cry, puke, curl on my bed, and had broken the news that he had someone else. herself. My ex seemed salty over the fact that she had chosen to stick with George. It was simple math. My ex was very successful, but George, although not wealthy yet, had become a physician and was spoken for to start a small practice with a potential partner. She upped and left and cheated him out of money along the way. Apparently, my ex figured out she had been lying about her condition. The disgust, pain, and disappointment hit me fairly hard, but somehow I had so heavily invested myself in helping her that I had emptied myself of any potential nerve-wracking reaction. I was numb. I went straight to all the wedding vendors and canceled before it was too late to get my money back. I defunded her wedding. No cake, no dress, and no veil. I sat down with George on a Friday afternoon and offered him all evidence and proof. He cried, but at the end admitted to feeling painfully relieved. Yes, he loved her, but he had felt pressure to get married. He confessed to many red flags. She always went to her medical appointments by herself and became irritated if he asked too many questions. She had shown him some test results that were incredibly well crafted, but now knowing what she had done, he thought the medical documents could be fake. He confirmed that the sneaky way, having his nurse ex-roommate run her name in the computer at where she claimed to be her doctor's office. It was logical on her part, as back then, a fairly small town had only one oncologist. We also suspected that she may have been having a new affair as she spent more and more weekends with her all-girls church camping group. She claimed it was her sanctuary and helped her a lot. It may have been a front. George and I accepted the fact that we had been cheated, taken advantage of, and emotionally destroyed by the same person. I personally felt the loss of innocence. Now I understood why she wanted to keep her wedding thing almost a secret. It may have been possible that making it public may have blown her cover one way or the other. George and I decided to do what was right. I paid for a video tribute to my loyal friend and decided to send it to the local news as the heartwarming story of love and healing. It featured her and George's apartment compound on purpose so that everyone wanting to serve her court papers could find her. I did not want to see her and I made up excuses, but George had a hard time feigning happiness when she had returned from her camping trip. It was an agonizing week. The news weren't showing our positive note yet and we were sick with the waiting. It all blew up on Tuesday morning. The news channel enthusiastically showcased our story with a collage and lots of information about her and how she was about to get married and had almost already beaten cancer. Dozens of ill-spoken haters popped from out of nowhere. As it turns out, this had been her second illness story. I never knew someone so close to me could lead such a scummy double life. My ex went straight to the channel and was interviewed. Oh man, it was pathetic. He poured his heart out about how crazy in love he had been and how she had only used him. I think by then, he did not care if all our friends and families found out what he had done. George confronted her with all the information. She denied it, then said it was a lapse of bad judgment. She moved out without too much drama. It took George over a decade to forgive himself for allowing someone to make him look so stupid as a person and as a physician. She left me some voicemails with lots of excuses. I picked up the phone only once and told her I had defunded and pulverized her wedding and that it was me who told George what was going on. I used a leveled voice to tell her to never call me again unless she wanted to find out how far I would go to see her pay for her unlawful actions. I cried immediately after I hung up. It was so surreal. George and I slowly found normality, but it took some time. He dated a couple of girls here and there, but was not ready. I myself became shut down. She avoided jail, I don't know how, even when our mutual friends filed petty claims for all the money they invested buying her stuff while she carried on under false pretenses. Eventually, I used the wedding money to partner with George and we opened a small clinic. Best decision ever! Over the years, George and I became best friends and grew closer. We got married some years ago and are proud parents to a happy family. Fun fact, I got a Facebook message from her 7 years ago. She began very sweetly but then proceeded to blame me and accused her of stealing her man and her life. I blocked her. Fun fact 2, I ran into my ex in 2001. He apologized profusely. I accepted his apology and told him it all worked out as I now have a life with someone who truly deserves me. Back then, George and I had begun dating. Fun fact 3, Mindy avoided doing time for her deeds back then, but was prosecuted for setting up a crowdfunding for a fake cause and stealing from an elderly person. I guess sometimes it really can be the people you think are the most supportive, loyal, and closest people around you. When the truth was revealed, it was like a hole opened up in the bottom of the earth and you went straight down. Personally, I would not even be able to imagine the kind of feelings and the kind of thoughts you would get having this kind of truth revealed to you. Kudos to OP for the amount of courage and strength they took to get through all that. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today, so if you enjoyed the stories today, please consider giving the video a like, and if you haven't, subscribe and turn notifications on so you'll never miss an upcoming video. And if you had a favorite story of the day, let me know which one and why in the comments down below. But no matter what you did, whether it was liking, commenting, subscribing, whatever you did, thank you all so very much for supporting me right here on the Storytime channel. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and as always, I'll be back tomorrow with more Reddit stories right here on the Storytime channel.